All right, today we're diving into a high-stakes game that gets played every single year in corporate finance. It's a world where one single day, literally 24 hours, can be the difference between getting a massive bonus and being at the center of a huge scandal.
I mean, really think about that. How is that even possible? Picture this. A company is right on the edge of hitting its biggest sales target ever. The bonuses are practically signed, the stock market is watching, but the clock is ticking down to midnight on New Year's Eve. The pressure to make those numbers is just immense. And in that kind of pressure cooker, financial reporting can get, shall we say, creative. But there are financial detectives out there. We call them auditors. And they know that somewhere in that mountain of paperwork, there's one document that holds the key to what really happened.
Okay, let's get right into it. This all comes down to the crazy pressure of this billion-dollar deadline.
Think about it. If you record a huge sale on December 31st instead of January 1st, that can be the one thing that pushes you over the line, the difference between meeting your annual targets or missing them completely. It impacts everything: your revenue, your profit, how much inventory you have left on the books. It's a ripple effect that can literally move markets.
So how do auditors cut through all that noise to find the actual truth? Well, they become detectives, and they do it by meticulously following the paper trail.
The guiding star for this whole investigation is a principle called revenue cutoff. It sounds technical, but the idea is actually super simple. You can only count a sale when your customer actually has control of the product. The key isn't when you send the bill, it's when the goods physically change hands. And this is where it gets really interesting. You've got two key pieces of paper. The invoice, that's the story the company wants to tell. You can create an invoice and date it pretty much whenever you want. But the delivery order, or DO, that's the fact. That's the hard evidence that proves the exact moment the goods walked out the door. It is the auditor's smoking gun. For a normal sale, happening right in the same country, the process is pretty clear. A customer sends a purchase order, you get the goods ready, and then, this is the critical part, you issue that delivery order as the truck is pulling away. Only then, after that, does the invoice get sent. That DO is the moment that matters. Now, for export sales, it's a similar idea, but we're dealing with ports and giant container ships. So here, the key document isn't a delivery order, it's something called a bill of lading, or BL for short. This is the official proof that the goods have been loaded onto that ship and are on their way. And to make sure everyone's on the same page, there's a whole rule book for this stuff called Incoterms. Basically, they're the super specific terms in a contract that pinpoint the exact moment of transfer. So, if a contract says FOB, or free on board, control transfers when the goods are on the ship. But if it says EXW, ex-works, it transfers the second they leave the warehouse. These terms leave absolutely no room for argument. Okay, so now that we know the rules, our financial detectives know exactly what they're looking for. They are officially on the hunt for red flags.
And these are the classic signs that something's not quite right. You see a massive, totally out-of-the-ordinary spike in sales on December 31st? Suspicious. You find an invoice dated in December, but the delivery order is from January? That is a huge red flag. Any missing paperwork or mismatched dates are exactly what they're trained to spot. At the end of the day, it all comes down to this one simple question that every single auditor has to keep asking themselves over and over again. They can't just take the company's word for it. They need to see the proof.
And that deep-seated skepticism is what leads them straight into a very methodical investigation, one that's designed to prove or disprove what they suspect. And this process is totally systematic. First, they learn how the company's own system works. Then they zoom in on that high-risk window, a few days before and after New Year's. They trace the paperwork from the invoice all the way back to the delivery document. And then, most importantly, they throw in a little bit of unpredictability.
Because here's the thing. This is where it gets really clever. If a company is trying to hide something, they're probably going to prepare for the standard tests, right? So how do auditors find something that someone is actively trying to conceal?
They use surprise tactics. It's their secret weapon. So instead of just checking the sales that were recorded, they'll check the opposite. They'll pull a list of delivery orders that never got an invoice. Why not? Or they'll look for DOs that were created at like 11 p.m. on a Sunday. Or they'll just pick random document numbers out of a hat to test. It's all about looking where nobody expects you to look. So, after all this detective work, all this talk of paper trails and secret weapons, what's the point? Why does this one super technical test matter so much?
Well, it all comes down to this final, simple verdict.
This table basically shows the judgment call. If all the evidence, the DO, the bill of lading, is dated December 31st or earlier, great, that's a yes. But if that invoice says December 31st and the goods didn't actually transfer until January, that is a clear and simple no. That revenue has to be moved into the next year.
And that no is unbelievably important. This one little test is a fundamental pillar of trust in our financial markets. It's what ensures the numbers that we all rely on, investors, employees, the public, reflect reality, not just the intense pressure to hit a number. It's about basic fairness.
Which leaves us with one last fascinating question. The rules seem pretty black and white. The documents are there to prove it. So why, year after year, is this specific issue still one of the most intense battlegrounds in all of finance? Maybe it's because wherever there are big rewards and clear rules, there will always be immense pressure to find the gray areas in between.